that God answered a prayer in a particular way in the past doesn't mean He's going to answer a prayer in a similar way in future. He could, but God is so diverse that He would answer prayers
a multitude of ways,
however He wants to answer it.
Hello, hi, I am Nobu Kumalo and welcome to Seasons, a series where I sit down with some of the incredible people I've had the privilege of rubbing shoulders with, and we have a chat about, the seasons that we've been through or the seasons that we're currently going through, in the hopes that you will feel seen, that you'll relate, and that you'll know you are not alone. Today, in the chair next to me, I have someone I've known for a couple of years. I think the first time I met him, I don't remember that I met him, but then later on, through interactions, we then interacted a bit further, and so I always struggle to pinpoint when exactly I met him. But anyway, over the years, our relationship has just developed and he's become a very, good, close friend, or even brother, if I should say. And he's here with me, and we had a very controversial start to this when he didn't want me to call him by his full name. So I will not do that. I will call him Soji. So we have Soji here with me. He is a person who loves God. I think that's the one thing that stands out for me when I speak to him or I watch him or when I listen to him speak, about his experiences. It's very clear that, he loves God. He is also a writer. He's a blogger. He blogs on the Langford Files. That's correct. .com. I will put the link in the description box. He hails from Nigeria. Came to the UK a couple of years back, like most of us, seeking after better opportunities for him. It was education, but many years later, he has found himself still here. And he has indulged me and agreed to come on here. Hi, Soji.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Very good. Very good.
Good. So to get you a bit comfortable, I'm going to ask you those awkward questions that you said. A bit weird. Okay, cool. You're a writer. Do you read a lot? I know you read the Bible, that's clear. Do you read, I know you read the Bible, I know you read Spirit of Prophecy. Do you read fiction, non-fiction outside of...
Fiction, no.
Okay.
Yeah, fiction, no. I don't really read fiction.
Okay.
I think a lot of what I read, so yes, the Bible.
Yeah.
But also Bible-related books.
Yeah.
And what I'm currently reading is called
I was going there.
Excuseless by Pastor Snell.
Okay. I like Snell.
Yeah, so he's very good.
Yeah.
So that I'm reading now. But yeah, I do read, but not fiction.
Okay.
Yeah, not fiction.
Okay.
I don't have enough time to swing between both.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
That's fine. That's fine. And then this one is a very controversial one. And please, I want you to answer honestly and not out of allegiance or whatever. Nigerian or Ghanaian jollof?
Because you said not out of allegiance, I actually do like Ghanaian jollof.
Okay.
Yeah, I've had it a couple of times and it's actually not bad.
Okay. So when people have this debate, what is it that makes Nigerian jollof or Ghanaian jollof? When you go to a dish, can you taste and be like, this tastes like Nigerian or this tastes like Ghanaian? Or...
So the thing with Nigerian jollof is there are a lot of variants.
Okay.
There are so many ways to make it.
Uh-huh.
And even when you just look on social media, people make it in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I think that variety is what makes it really interesting.
Okay.
The Ghanaian one has a unique taste.
Okay.
Right? Maybe it's the type of rice that is used or how it's made, but there's something unique about it. Right? So, and which I liked.
Okay.
When you have it with shito and, there's this special sauce that the Ghanaians.
Okay. No idea what that is.
Yeah, so it's actually not bad.
Okay.
But the Nigerian one, I think the tier 1 type of Nigerian jollof is what's called party jollof.
Okay.
It's like top tier.
Can you make that?
I can make jollof. The party one, you make it in some kind of way which I'm not an expert at.
Okay.
So, yeah. I don't want to burn my house.
Have we tasted your jollof? We have tasted your jollof. Okay. At the next thing, can you please bring some jollof? Okay. I think now you're a bit relaxed. Okay. Because you're talking about jollof and food. So when I called on you to come onto my podcast, I did it specifically because I said I've listened to you speak, I've seen you relate with people, and I did say that one thing that stands out for me is that you really do love God, and I think you also do see and love people. But bigger than that, I have come to associate you with hard work, with excellence, with putting your best foot forward and making sure that, like the Bible says, like whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might, right? And so when I called you, I said I wanted to talk about, I called it, diligence, hard work, and excellence, which are the three words that you use quite a lot when you talk about life. But the twist that I wanted to bring to it, and because the podcast is about seasons, right, is the fact that, sometimes you can be seemingly doing all that you should be doing, right, very well, and yet things just don't work out the way you expect them to work out, right? So one of the stories that I don't know if I've heard or read or both, is your road to the UK, the road to London. You were back home in Nigeria. I'm not sure what you were doing at that time or before then, but at some point you're like, I want to do an MBA, right? Talk me through that stage. Obviously, you probably by the time you want to come to do an MBA, you've been, I don't know, in your craft for a while, and there's like something valuable that you see in doing it. Just talk me through that. What was the journey to I want to do an MBA, and then bigger than that, to then say I want to go 1, 2, 3? Because doing an MBA, you could almost do an MBA anyway, right? But you were clear about what you want to do and where you want to do it and what it takes to get there. Talk me through that.
Yeah, so it was. So when I decided I wanted to do it, it was back in 2011, and part of my motivation at the time was also because my closest friends had also gone to business school.
Okay.
All right, they had gone to Wharton and Stanford, to be specific. So I think part of that was me thinking, okay, look, my guys have left. What am I still doing here? Like, I could as well go do mine as well. And so that thought was very prevalent in my mind. And as you might have read in one of my blog posts, I had written about how I was sitting in church this particular day.
Yes.
And the thought came to my mind, and the thought of voice basically said, you will go to business school free of charge. And that was it.
So you were thinking about this, and then this was sort of like a confirmation to say, or did did the voice come before the idea, or the voice came first? And
I was already thinking about going, but this specific sentence, or because if the voice only said you go to business school, then I'd be like, okay, maybe it's just my head thinking about it.
Yeah.
But the addition of going free of charge.
What did you make of that voice?
When it wasn't the first time that I had an experience with God where God spoke to me in some shape or form. Right. So it happened again. I was like, okay, look, let's sort of see where this is going. And for me, what that meant was that, okay, if this voice is true, then it means I need to start to act on it.
I think it's interesting that you say it wasn't the first time that you've heard God's voice speak, because I don't know, maybe it's just me. I sometimes, think, God, I wish you still used to like speak in a proper like loud voice and a burning bush, and I could know that it's you. Because I'm like, how do I know this is you or this is me in my head? Sometimes actually there's no voice, and how do I know if we're okay, or if you're speaking to me or guiding me? Apart from, in retrospect, I can say, okay, the way things worked out, this was surely the hand of God. But I don't, and God will forgive me if maybe I don't remember, but I don't distinctly remember hearing a voice like that. So I think it goes back to what I said at the start, that I think I have come to know you as someone who has a deep, intimate relationship with God, such that when that voice came, you didn't flinch or think twice or thrice or wonder what's going on. You knew exactly what it was. But anyway, let's continue. So this voice says you will go free of charge.
Yeah, so that was what the voice said. And if I'm to take a step back, because at that time it was literally a couple of months after I'd started a new job.
Okay.
But the prior time that I'd heard God speak was in my process of trying to accept the offer for that particular job. Okay, because I was sort of like neither here nor there. I didn't really want to go to the new firm. And I was wondering, okay, what exactly am I doing?
Yeah.
So I remember exactly where I was that day. So I was driving back home. I know exactly where I was in Lagos. I remember. And the thought came exactly to my head that the reason why I had been failing, I was taking this particular exam, professional exam, and I'd failed it so many times. And the voice basically said the reason why you had been failing was so that when this opportunity came, you'll be ready.
Okay.
And if I had passed that exam much earlier, my firm at the time would have changed my department and moved into another department. Stockbroking.
Yeah.
I was in research
Yeah.
at that point in time. So when this opportunity came, and at that time, this new employer they were like the best in the game, in the industry, right? So when they came knocking, if I'd gone to another department, I wouldn't have had the experience for that opportunity. Okay, so when they came, I already had the experience, and ultimately I was able to accept the offer. Okay, so that was the previous time, one of the previous times that I had got to speak. So in 2011, that voice spoke, and I started preparing, started taking my GMATs, because to go to business school, one of the key gating points is you need to get a good GMAT score.
Okay.
And a good GMAT score means you need to get a score of, typically it's 700 plus.
Okay.
Over 800.
Okay.
A really good score is 720 and above.
Hectic.
Yeah. So I'd taken the exam. Ultimately, I ended up taking it about 5 times.
Okay.
Right. And my score just never improved.
So what says keep going?
Man,
Because I'll carve it and say you're a generally smart guy, so you know you can do, like, this is not something that you're just like, trying to force, because you're a generally smart guy, so you can get the score, but you're just not getting the score. What says keep going?
Maybe also because I had tried a professional exam in the past.
Yeah.
And with that also it was a struggle. So I think what I can basically say to you is, for me and my life's journey, it's like every phase has come with a bit of a struggle.
Okay.
Right? So it's not happened where I sort of like just want to do X and everything just goes full on. I tend to face some sort of friction when I'm trying to make certain life transitions.
Okay.
And it's been that way since I was in university and even afterwards. I mean, there's a lot of stories, but that's not what I want to get into now. So I think even this time again, I tried exams before, and for different reasons I didn't pass.
Yeah.
So I think facing those challenges again, that I didn't pass didn't mean I should give up.
Okay.
Right. So I just kept going.
Okay.
Right. So I kept doing it, and I think I had my mind fixed on this is what I would like to do, and that just kept me going. So I did it a couple of times. When I did the exam and my score didn't improve, I was like, okay, look, I know this is what they've said is the score they require, but I'm just going to apply.
Yeah.
So I think it was 2013, 2014, I applied, I did Harvard Business School, Wharton, and INSEAD. 2 of those came back with a no. Only Wharton moved ahead with an interview.
Okay.
So I went for the interview in London, went to somewhere near Baker Street.
Yeah.
I had my interview, which was great.
So,
And after all of that, I was waiting for you've done the interview.
yeah.
Where's my
Offer?
my offer?
Yeah.
So I was in Kenya on a work trip, and I was there in my room. I was praying. It was like 10 p.m. at night.
Yeah.
I was like, man, God, I've done everything.
Yeah.
Just like, this is it.
Yeah.
Then the email came, because the email was coming that day.
Oh, you knew it was the day.
The email was coming that day. That was the day it was coming.
Yeah.
So the email, I was waiting for the email. Email finally came and it was a no. Right? And trust me, I sank on my bed. I was so sad. I can't express the level of sadness.
Especially because, when your score hasn't been improving, to have said no, you feel like, you feel like I've been through trials and tribulations, and this interview seems like, God has finally remembered me. So, and you're like literally holding on. That thought where you're like, nah, God wouldn't do me like that. Like, he's got me like that. And then, not that he's not got you like that, but then things still don't work out. Yeah. Hectic.
Yeah, exactly. So I felt really bad.
Yeah.
But look, I went back home after that experience, and I said, okay, you know what? This GMAT seems to be the issue. Let me try it again. So I think maybe this was my 3rd attempt at the exam. Still, my score did not improve. That score just never improved.
Yeah.
I did it again. So I think come 2015, I decided, okay, you know what? Let me apply again. So then I applied to a bunch of schools, but this time around, I included London Business School as an additional school for the program. And so I applied to all of these schools. Everybody said no, including Wharton, which I reapplied to again. So they all said no. Then LBS moved me ahead to what's called, they put me on what's called a waitlist.
Okay.
So a waitlist means we like you, but not enough to give you an admission just
At
yet.
least now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the more I went back to the school to try and find out, what exactly is the issue, they ultimately told me the issue was this GMAT.
Okay.
This GMAT was still the issue. So let me not fast track your question. So your question was the process of getting to the MBA.
Yeah.
So that's where I should get.
Yeah.
Is that how far you want me to go?
Eventually, we need to.
Okay, so
we need to go to the MBA.
Yeah.
You might as well just just
All right.
go there. But before maybe we
Yeah.
get to the MBA, you are writing you're doing what you can. Doing your GMATs. As far as what is in your control is. But I'm curious to know, in the season where it's not clear that this thing that you want is going to happen, you have to stay busy, stay ready. So what were you doing apart from taking the GMAT to position yourself such that when this thing comes, I hit the ground running? Because I feel like sometimes when you face rejection or disappointment, it can sink you into this hole where you are powerless, like you can't even do anything. But what I'm learning from you is that you kind of have to keep going and working on yourself and presenting yourself and making sure that you are readying yourself for the opportunity to come knocking. So what were you doing, knowing and believing that voice that says, I will go to business school free of charge is true? What were you doing during the wait to prepare for the blessing?
Look, all I was doing was just preparing for that. Taking the gym. That's all I was trying to do.
And professionally, what were you still as invested in your job? Or
No, I was very invested.
Okay.
Career side, things were great.
Okay.
And I think even I missed, may never look like what you've been through. So I think that's something I've come to realize. It sounds like a prayer, but
Yeah.
I've been through a lot of experiences, and there's just a lot that typically happens. But even with the job, things were going very well.
Yeah.
Okay, I was getting promoted.
Yeah.
I remember there was a point in time when the beginning of that year, I told my bosses that, hey, look, I'm not happy with my salary. I would like a pay raise. And they basically said, if you like a pay raise, you could as well just get an offer from another firm. And that's how it works in the industry.
Okay.
You sort of show up with another offer and they probably try to match you.
Yeah.
So I go all out. I had a bunch of interviews with this other bank. And I'd met everybody up to the CEO level to head up their investor relations team. And the next thing was for them to give me an offer.
Yep.
Then I go on holiday in London for a week.
Yep.
And as I go, my boss resigns. Another senior person on another part of the business resigns. Then the overall boss starts to panic. Like, why is Soji in London?
Yeah.
Is Soji also resigned? What's going on? So I'm just there on literally an honest holiday.
Yeah.
Right? So he calls me. We had a meeting in Green Park.
Yeah.
We sat on the grass and he's like, hey, look, we really like you, blah, blah, blah. What's your number?
Okay.
What's your number means, what does it take to keep you?
Yeah.
Oh, man. And I gave him this outlandish number, and they almost matched it.
Wow.
They almost matched that number. It was a bit of back and forth, but I got very close to it.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So there are a lot of things happening. On the job itself, I was winning a bunch of awards related to my field, etc.
Do you think that made it kind of easy to go through this? When you can see that, fine, there's this one thing that I'm struggling with, but honestly, God, you are clearly showing up for me because look at this. Because I feel like it's harder when it feels like nothing, absolutely nothing is going right for you.
Actually, I think what tends to happen is when you're going through that season, when you're believing God for something, you tend to be very
laser focused
on just that thing.
Yeah.
And you tend to forget everything else happening around it. And I think that's what was happening with me.
Yeah.
So the job was great.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things. Anybody who looked at me wouldn't know that I was facing this challenge in this other area because that was a very private experience.
Yes.
Right. But outside of all of that, everything was looking fine. Okay. But, you just wouldn't. And I think that's typically how it works with a lot of people.
Yeah.
You're very focused on this singular thing that looks as if it's the only problem you have in the whole world. But quite frankly, there's just so much else that God is doing all around. Which we tend to just not pay a lot of attention to.
Yeah, we're just blinded by the despair or the pain or whatever it is that we're going through in the moment. So
it's like when you have an injury on literally just this one finger.
Yeah.
The rest of your body is fine. But all you think about is this.
Is this finger.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so cool. LBS. Continue.
Yeah, so I think 2015, remember I told you about the waitlist?
Yeah.
So the waitlist happened, then come January, February 2016, ultimately they tell me, look, we're no longer considering you for admission. Basically, no.
Yeah.
Right, if you want to reapply, fine, you can reapply
later when your score is better, basically.
At your convenience in future. And this was after, anytime I was in London, I would go to see these guys. I literally did whatever I could. Right, whenever I'm alone, I'm just like, yeah, guys, I'm in town, let's have a chat. And they obliged me and they saw me.
That's the putting yourself forward that I was talking about.
Yeah, so faith and works.
Yeah.
Right, so I wasn't just believe, because I knew about the GMAT issue.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's also God, right? There's also God who can actually do this. And one thing, I remember one thought I used to have at the time was that, what if God wants to use all of this for his glory and he doesn't want to give me that admission because of the GMAT, but he wants to give me the admission in spite of the GMAT. Okay. So that was the thought I was having every now and then. So I mean, this was always going on in my mind. So I was just like, okay, you know what? So let me do what I think I need to do. Right. So I'll come to London, I'll see the guys. But ultimately they said no. And I think that day, I remember I was in my bedroom when I got that email. And probably within an hour, the person that interviewed me pinged me on WhatsApp. Like, hey, Soji, how are you? What's been going on? And this is someone, I've been keeping them updated about how things have been going. And so he said, okay, no problem. That's unfortunate. But you see, at that point in time, everything else that happened was God. Yeah. Right. So he introduced me to a lady called Nona, South African lady who was the president of the Africa Club at the time on campus. And she took up my case. She didn't know me from Adam. I've never met her before. So she picked up my case, spoke to the admissions director, like, hey, look, there's a gentleman. I think you should strongly reconsider his application. The director said, okay, you know what, when next is back in London, let him come see me. So I went to London, had a chat with him, probably like 60, 90 minutes, just trying to understand my story, my journey, etc. And why I was passionate about coming to that particular school. And I think this was in February. March, April, May, radio silence. Nice. Yeah, no feedback.
Are you at this point? Are you hopeful that something could come out of this, or it's one of those? If it does, cool.
Yeah, you have to be hopeful. See, the best friend of a hoping person is two words. What if? Yeah, you just always have to assume what if, right? And you're always working with permutations in your head, which is just what if. What if I try this and this happened? You just can't. I mean, ultimately, you might get to a stage where you know that you've tried everything you can and nothing is going to work. Okay, because that's literally it. You've done all that you can. But until you've gotten to that stage, man, you have to do everything you can do. Because there's a statement which someone made, which was that you have to do all that you can as if what you're praying for is depends on you.
Exactly. And then pray,
but also pray as much as if all you're praying for is dependent on God. Right? So until you've really done all that you can't really say that. Because ultimately, if you don't get what you were praying for, what you don't want is to look back with regret. Yes. To say that I didn't, I could have. I could have.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So all the I could have need to be quenched.
Yeah.
Okay? So anything I did to do or I thought I could do, man, you have to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So ultimately, March, April, May, nothing happened. Then, I mean, I think, some other word came. I found an excuse to email the guy, like, hey, look, it's up. Long email, just give me an update. I was like, guys,
what's going on?
I'm still here. Okay, don't forget about me. So I emailed him. Yeah. He responded within a few hours. I was like, oh, literally tomorrow, I'm representing your case to the admissions committee.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, thank you very much. Hope for good news. Then the following week, on a Wednesday or Thursday, I get an email. They've granted me my admission.
Wow.
Okay. So that was great.
Yeah.
Okay. What had happened, just let's not miss the point about what had happened here. Yeah. My GMAT score
had
never
not changed.
It was the same GMAT score. And the school has a range of what they would consider for admission.
Okay.
I was literally at the lowest possible score of what that range was. I was not close to, literally at the bottom. I mean, whatever that floor was, that's where I was. Okay, I mean, your viewers are probably wondering what this score is, but I'm refusing to say the score. Maybe they can go do the research and find out what the score was. But I was literally at the floor. That's where I was, and despite that score, God granted me the admission. And see, the other beauty I've learned about doing things repeatedly, in as much as my score never improved, what's happening when you fail exams is your brain is getting rewired. You're becoming a better master of the subject.
Yeah.
Right? Although you might not have passed the exam, your brain is, because you're having to do this over and over again. So actually nowadays, because a big part of the GMAT process is critical reasoning. right? So you're probably wondering, why do I write a lot?
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of it is also because, I mean, when you study the Bible, there's a lot of connecting the dots you need to do.
Yeah.
Right? From the Old Testament to the New Testament,
Yeah.
you're reading one single text. Why was this said?
Yeah.
A lot of that happened, or should I say my thinking ability was improved by virtue of failing this exam so many times.
Which you probably wouldn't have. You would have gained the skills in life some other way, but you wouldn't have done it, maybe. But because you had to do this over and over again, you are reaping its benefits even now.
Correct. Yeah. So there are a lot of things which, when you look back at the experience, I probably wonder why did all of these things happen. But then, so that was that. So anyways, I get my admission. 2 weeks after, I wake up at about 7 a.m. trying to go to work.
Before we get there,
fine.
Maybe you're going there, but I want to know, you got the admission.
Yeah.
The voice said you're going to business school free of charge. So at this point, are you saying, Lord, that free of charge part needs to come, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's going to come. So were you thinking, oh, now I have the admission, now the next step is I now need to start applying for scholarships to make the free of charge happen? Or were you just believing that it's going to?
You know, all I'd been focused on was just getting that admission. So I don't think I had even remembered that 2011 promise.
Yeah.
All I just knew was that, okay, this admission has come. The free of charge could happen anywhere.
Yeah.
I just didn't know the how.
Yeah.
So all I was doing in that moment was trying to figure out, okay, if this needed to be funded, what are my options?
What are your options?
So I was looking at all my options.
Okay.
I sent the school an email like, guys, listen, the currency is under a lot of pressure. Please, if there's any funding you could give me, please provide. I sent them money. They replied saying, we'll consider it alongside everybody else. Naturally, because you've been given an admission, but there's no guarantee there will be anything on offer. You know, that was fair. So I was basically just looking around and trying to assess all my options, which could also include, are there people that you could ask for, for funding? What savings do I have? What are the debt options that existed? But the debt option I really didn't want to explore.
Yeah.
I mean, as Adventist Christians, it is like taking debt it's probably like the last thing to be considered. So it wasn't something I was keen on. So yes, I think during that period, that was all I was doing. Just making sure that I had all my ducks in a row, like everything I could do in my own way, just get it done. The funding, I just sort of believed it to figure itself out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to be, because sometimes people refuse to even take the step to try to apply to business school.
Because like, I can't afford it. So
because you hear the fees and you're like, okay, £100,000, how am I going to afford that? And you don't even try.
Yeah.
But for me, I was just like, man, listen, let me say something else, which is, you see this whole Christianity journey. So this idea of reading the Bible, going to church, praying, what's the essence if you actually can't test God? If you can't test him and actually see him come through for you, what's actually the point? What's the actual point?
That is a question. That's a very good question I have no answer to.
Yeah. So what's the actual point? So I think that was also playing at the back of my mind, which is this God that we say we serve.
Yeah. And he says himself that, try me.
Test me, yeah. So this God that we say we serve, put him to the test. Put him to actually give him an opportunity to show himself. Right? Give him an opportunity to do all that he can.
Yeah.
But actually give him a chance to prove himself.
Okay.
Yeah. So so that's basically what was happening. And
2 weeks later?
Yeah, so 2 weeks later I wake up at about 6, 7 a.m. I'm going through my emails. And then there was an email again from the school. Hi, Soji, congratulations. We've granted you a full tuition scholarship. And this scholarship, they give it to just one African every year.
This is after saying we'll consider you alongside everyone else.
Yeah. So this one scholarship, and that was given to me, which covered all of my tuition at the time, which was great.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's not something I applied for.
Yeah.
Everybody was considered, and they decided to give it to me. And they were giving it to me at the point when literally they had probably finished admitting the entire year.
Yeah.
Because this was just before school started.
Okay.
Right. And so I think all of these things literally then proved that when I heard that voice in church, it wasn't a random voice. Okay, because ultimately it did come through. But also remember, because what the voice said was that you go free of charge.
Yeah.
Going free of charge doesn't only mean tuition.
Yes. It means that you will not have to spend a single dime.
There's a cost of living element as well. When I finished the program and I ran through my finances, Okay, in terms of how did I manage to cover my cost of living,
Yeah.
all the travel required. That was actually the case. I probably
The
almost
scholarship was tuition only.
tuition was tuition only.
But when you look back now, you're
when
like...
I look at everything else, from my internships to investments and returns to other internships that I did, I mean, literally all the funding that came through over that period of time covered my cost of living.
So now, having heard that voice, having had the experience, looking back now, what do you think that experience taught you about God?
First of all, that He's real and that He exists. Also, that faith and works go hand in hand.
Yes.
You can't just say that you're believing in God and
you sit on your hands.
sit on your hands and you go to sleep. You literally have to hit the pavement. So do all that you can in your own power to bring what you're praying to God for to pass. And and I think sometimes there's this verse in the Bible that talks about, be still and know that I'm God, which is a powerful verse. But I think people also sometimes read that verse
too literally
and out of context. Because if you actually look at the context of that chapter, it's actually a prophetic chapter talking about when end times people have literally done all. I mean, they're under attack, and there's literally nothing they could do. And God is saying, "Be still, and know that I'm God." Right? I'm going to come through for you.
Yeah.
But this is after you've tried everything. Yes. You've run to the rocks. You've gone
so
to hide.
still doesn't mean they've said they're coming, stay there. Like,
it doesn't
in
mean
the
you
street,
stand, someone is shooting shots at you, you stand in front of the gunshot. You go and hide.
Still. Yeah.
Right? So I think people tend to use that, even pastors also do it, you use this verse out of context. And as Christians, sometimes you're just like, okay. And I think there's a time to be still. Okay, there's a time to be still. But I also think that time to be still is when you've literally done all that you can. And there are also certain situations where there's actually nothing you can do. So, I mean, someone has an accident. Yeah. Right? I mean, you take the person to the hospital, but all you can do is pray that the person gets better. Yeah. But there are certain situations when there are so many options that you have. And you just have to apply your brain, pray to God, commit your plans to Him. Yeah. Try your best every single day. And see what happens. And sometimes your prayer might be answered. Sometimes it's a delay. Sometimes it's a no. Yeah. I think that's the beauty and uncertainty of the relationship or the walk with God.
I always say that, I think I said it when I was talking to Tandy also, that, or maybe it wasn't Tandy, but I was like, you know what you're saying, that it can be yes, delay and no. That sometimes knowing that it can be no kind of puts you in a position like, what's the point anyway? Because you kind of feel like God is just going to accomplish His will, whatever His will is with your life. Whether you ask or not, He's just going to do what He wants to do. But there's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. Is the whole story of the journey of the children of Israel from Egypt, right, until they reached the promised land in Canaan. And a particular story that I don't want to say I like because they were just being, unreasonable. But, when they are in the wilderness and they're like, God, how could you bring us this far? Only for us to like starve and die of hunger and all that. And they'd forgotten how far God had led them in the past. So you have gone through this trying time, and God has brought you to the promise at that time. You're past the promise. You've gone through your MBA. Great, you've passed. God, you brought me to London. So surely, you
have a plan.
You have a plan. Sustain it. And then 1 year later, you're like,
tears.
2 years later, you're like, what's going on? Tell me about that season where especially because of your relationship with God, that God's got you. But for years, it seems like nothing is happening. Yeah. I'm here in this foreign country. I need to make it work, but nothing's happening. Yeah. What are you thinking?
Basically, when the program finished, it took me another year to find a full-time role. Yeah. Okay, and which was, it was a year. Now I can say it's a year because I know it's a year. But when you're in the season, you're just wondering, when will this happen? And when I say it was a year, literally, I probably had, because you hear me talking about hitting the pavement and all of these things, and trust me, I was practicing that. Yeah. I had well over 200 interactions trying to find a job. Whether it was an interview, coffee chat, just name it. Yeah. Or reaching out to people. Yeah. I had an Excel sheet where I was tracking every single conversation. Yeah. I still have that sheet till today. And so who did I meet? Where did we meet? what was the follow-up that was required. I was literally tracking everything. Over 200. I just don't know how many. We're well over 200. And just literally there was no door opened. Zero.
Like zero.
Zero. None.
Not even like slightly a window opens. Nothing.
No door opened. And only God knows why. But I think when I look back now, there was a call on my life, let me put it that way. Okay. And I think I didn't know at the time. And I was just going through, thinking that, okay, God answered that prayer then, brought me out of Nigeria, to the UK. Yeah. And I just sort of thought, like, okay, yeah, like, now it's time to...
Cruising nicely now.
Now it's time to, like, get this, high-flying job and, go live a fantastic life. And perhaps there was a reason why God preferred for me to be in London as opposed to be in the US.
Yeah.
Perhaps I wouldn't have met you if I had gone to the US. Right? So there was definitely a lot of things going on. And that 1 year, you see, that 1 year when you started with the Israelites in the wilderness.
Yeah, it was a few days.
That was definitely a wilderness season.
Yeah.
So wilderness season where you're wondering, God, where are you? And I specifically say, God, where are you? Because the book that I read that helped me to understand that this was a wilderness season was actually titled, God, Where Are You?
Okay.
Right.
Who's the author?
His name skips my mind now.
Okay.
That shouldn't be the case. But it's a very good pastor.
Yeah.
But his name skips. It's called God, Where Are You? And so I read the book, and I'm just like, this is actually a thing. Like the wilderness is actually a thing.
Yeah.
Right. And this was January of 2019 when I was reading that book. I mean, I read that book. That was probably the quickest book I've ever read.
Because you're looking for answers.
Yeah, I read the book so quickly. And I was just like, wow. But anyways, bottom line is it took me a year to find a job.
Yeah.
Eventually I had to leave the UK because of visa issues.
Yeah.
I had to move back home. And when I moved back, finally I get my first job offer. Right. I get this job offer and this job was leadership program for this global agricultural company that have taken me around the world.
Okay.
Over a 1 year period.
Yeah.
Then when you're done, they sort of like fit you
somewhere in the organization.
Fit you somewhere. Yeah. Got me the offer. I mean, looked great. Finally, I have an offer. The first offer. The first offer in a year. I get the offer, and I'm just like, okay, great. But for something, I wasn't at peace in my mind for some reason. I just don't know why. So then I decided, okay, fine. If I'm going to accept this offer, I could as well just tell them that I'm an Adventist and I keep the Sabbath.
Yeah.
So on the call, I think I sent them an email or it was on the phone, and I mentioned it, and they're like, okay, you know what? It was on a Friday. I said, okay, you know what? Let's give it a thought. We'll come back to you. And then I started to panic. Why do you think this is just sort of straightforward request? So Friday, Saturday, Sunday passed. I spent that weekend fasting with a friend of mine over that weekend. And come Monday, they come back to me and they said, okay, you know what? We cannot guarantee that we'll be able to accede to your request about, keeping the Sabbath, etc. And they pulled the offer. Yep. So just think about it. The first offer I was receiving. Yeah. And I mean, I was taking a bit of a risk because this was always a possibility. Yes. Like, why would I even want to take that risk? Yeah. Like, why dude, man, you've been praying to God for a job for a year.
I was about to say that. You've been praying for a year. This is, my faith was tried and tested, and finally I have seen the goodness of the Lord.
Correct.
And then
I decided to do this thing, which was to mention that I actually keep the Sabbath. And then the offer was yanked.
My lawyer brain is going wild right now because I'm like, how dare they? They're not allowed to do that. But anyway, we're not there.
So
at that time, are you as honest as you can be, as a fallible human being who believes in God and His principles and what you should stick for, but also a person who has been in the wilderness and you have been waiting for a break that has been snatched away from you? Are you still standing proud, as in I stood up for my principle and this was the right thing to do? Or are you like, why did I do that? No. Not why did I do that in the sense that I would have worked, I should have like never even brought it up and I would have just continued to work the Sabbath. But maybe I should have done it later. Some people say they prefer that people get to know them and their quality of work such that by the time you're raising the subject, they're like, we've seen Soji. Soji works well. So we can. At that time when your offer is pulled, are you like, it's fine, this is the right thing to do, this is principle, or are you really like, yeah?
So I think I took it in my stride.
Okay.
So I was very sad. I think that entire day I was just very, very low.
Yeah.
But I think, I'd been through a lot already. So this additional rejection was just adding to the pile.
And keep it moving.
Correct. I keep it moving. And also because I still had options.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel as if I was totally out of depth. I mean, there were still other conversations going on. But just nothing I had finalized. Okay. But this particular one, because I had actually received an offer. And so it was great. They're going to pay me in dollars. I mean, it was a great offer. I mean, I thought it was interesting. I learned a lot over 1 year and sort of figure out where things go. But it also wasn't the answer to my prayers, because the answer to my prayer was that I wanted to move back to London.
Yes, okay.
Not to go to some random countries.
Okay. So maybe that's why it was easy also to take in your stride.
Perhaps. Okay. Right. But remember I also said I was a bit uneasy about it.
Yes.
So when they pulled it, I was like, okay. So I sort of like started thinking about, okay, what next? So I was thinking about a lot of things. But literally that same day or the day after, the job I ended up getting, the conversations progressed. Right. And the way the job, remember, a couple of years back, I told you that when I was in the church, sitting there, I told you the story of when I was driving and God spoke to me that the reason why you didn't pass this was so you'd be ready for this job. The job that saved me out of this wilderness season, maybe almost 10 years after, was that same company. Right? Because they were the ones who reached out again. Yeah. So I left them to go to business school. Yeah. They reached out again. I wasn't planning to go back, but they reached out again after business school. Like, hey, look, we'd like to bring you back. Yeah. And we agreed terms within, probably 2 weeks. And I was back in the UK within a month.
When God says, I really like that verse that says, it's escaping my mind, but it speaks about God doing exceedingly and abundantly above all that we can think or ask or imagine. At the time when there's this offer that you were uneasy about, but was what you needed, but was pulled away. And then this one, where from reading your blog post, I know that the pay was good. Some wasn't even an issue. When you look back at that time, what feelings did it evoke in you? Seeing standing up to principle work out that way, also knowing that it could have gone either way, and you could have been stuck for years not having had something. And I also want us to touch on the subject. I don't think it would be a good service for me not to touch on the subject of the Sabbath, just briefly, about what it is and why it was so important to you to not compromise on it, such that even when you look back to date, you're like, it's fine, I was going through a wilderness season. A normal person would have grabbed it with their hands, but this is why I could not.
Yeah. Remember, I said a few minutes ago that I really believe there was a calling on my life. Because during that 1 year period, I had come to really understand what it meant to keep the Sabbath. So growing up in Nigeria, so back at home, because Sabbath is Friday sunset, Saturday sunset. It's one of the 10 commandments, right? The fourth one to be specific. But growing up in Nigeria, it was like just another day. Okay. Right? It was the day you go to church. Okay. Right? But after church, anything could be happening. Right?
So that means even the Friday before it.
Even the Friday before. Yeah. Right? And that was just sort of like my environment growing up. Yeah. But when I moved to the UK, one of the things that puzzled me was, why on earth are this guy spending the entire day in church? I just couldn't figure it out. Right?
A lot of people who are not even Adventists, right? Yeah. They say that's the one thing that they can't get about Adventists. Like, you go in the morning and you spend the whole day. Just go for a service. 1-2 hours, we're out and we go do our thing for the rest of the day.
Yeah. So I just couldn't figure that out. But during that 1 year period, the Sabbath had taken a whole new meaning in my life. Right? So Friday evenings, I started taking it more seriously. I was spending actually doing Bible study. Yeah. And actually during that wilderness season is when I started the blog. Because the blog was basically the outcome of all my Bible studies. Okay. Right. So just like my thoughts, my Bible study notes. I started doing my notes in YouVersion. But then ultimately, a friend of mine encouraged me, like, look, all these posts are just hiding in YouVersion. Why don't you actually just put it on the website? Okay. Which I did. Yeah. Right. So all of that happened within that 1 year period. So the Sabbath had taken a whole new meaning. And the other thing about, being in the wilderness season is sometimes you might want to focus exclusively on your problems, right? But during that season, I know you did something about community.
Yeah.
I established a whole new community in church.
Yeah.
Right. And this was a community where, yes, we do Bible studies together, but we'd also have lunch together. And there's just so much more to talk about beyond just just my own issues.
Yeah.
Right. And then because, man, look, a lot of things happen during that season because sometimes I wake up in the morning, I'm just wondering like, okay, what does today have to offer? It's winter, it's cold, it's grey outside.
Yeah.
I just wonder like, okay, like, what, because there was no job, there was nothing happening, right? I was just trying to figure it out every day. And I had no idea how long all of this was going to take. I knew when my visa was going to expire. So I was sort of like walking on a clock.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, but I just had to keep going. And also just know that, man, there's time now. What could I be doing during this period? So church took a whole new meaning. Monday evenings, there was a Bible study in church. Wednesday evenings, Bible study in church. Friday evenings, a group of us as friends would meet somewhere in the city for Bible studies. Yeah. Saturday, we're in church. I mean, so when I came back to Nigeria then, and these guys made me an offer and they couldn't accommodate it. I actually wasn't forced. I was like, if this is what I stood for, it is so much more important to me now that I was willing to let this offer go because like I said, if this God that we're serving is true, if he actually exists, he has to figure this out. Right? Because I stood up for him. The only reason I stood up is because why? Where did this whole idea of Sabbath come from? Yeah. It's because it's written in the Bible. Yeah. Right. And it's because I chose to believe that if this is true, then if I'm going to make a decision, then everything has to align. Yeah. Right. And if it doesn't align, then he has to have an alternative. Yeah. So that's basically what it was. And so I think you asked about what exactly is the Sabbath. It's one of the 10 Commandments. And it's actually a day of rest, a day of worship where you gather with the brethren to actually worship God and, put aside all your work, no buying or selling, etc. And, just spend that day or that 24-hour period working on God. And I think also because I tend to travel quite a bit. The other thing is sometimes I could be anywhere in the world and it's really a time zone issue. Yeah. So it's really a function of where I'm at in the world that 24...
What that sunset to sunset means. Correct. Yeah, and I know the struggle. Here in the winter it's like 3:45, the depth of winter 3:45. Then now in the summer it's like 10 p.m. It's such a weird thing. Yeah, but I always say to whether Adventist believer or not, I always say I genuinely do not know how I could do life without the Sabbath. When I say my brain switches off, so I could be having the worst week ever. I could know that there's a ton of work waiting for me after the Sabbath. But when I say my brain switches off, it completely switches off. And I think it's just a gift, man, that God gave us. And I think maybe it's our fault as Adventists. Maybe how we present it is this thing that has a lot of don'ts. But when you think about it, it really is just a gift that God gave us to say, just rest in me. The world is constantly demanding of us to be productive, to give of our time, of our resources, of our minds, or whatever. And God just says, just for one day, I know it looks like you are giving up a lot of those things, but just for one day, just rest in me. And know that you are covered and protected.
I know the one thing I didn't say was that job that I got after the one that I rejected. Yeah. Guess what? The CEO was Jewish. The head of HR was Jewish.
So it's not even an issue.
So the idea of the Sabbath was actually a non-starter. Yeah. They were like, we get it. You just do what you want to do. I know for the almost 4-year period that I worked with them, there was never a day where keeping the Sabbath was an issue. Was never an issue.
Look at God.
Not once did they ever ask me, you need to come work on Saturday.
Look at God.
Never happened.
Amazing. Yeah. You get this job, this job that takes you out of the wilderness season, and your life progresses and your career progresses. You find yourself in a good job, but you are thrown sort of another curveball, or rather potential curveball, where you find yourself in a situation where you now need to reevaluate and try to figure out what's next for you. And it's another season again where I don't think this one was a wilderness season per se, because at that point you were
it was a
season.
Trust me, it was another season, huh? But,
yeah. Tell me about that season.
No, I mean, so basically, this job, this company that God used me to bring me out of that.
Yeah.
For different reasons, employees needed to find another job.
Yeah.
Okay, so my team, for example, in London, there was probably like 10 of us. About 8 people had to leave. And there were just 2 people left, so myself and, someone else. I could also have been asked, this is another testimony.
Yes.
I'm saying it as if, I stayed. But look, I was spared from the axe, let me put it that way.
Yeah.
And essentially, that was also God's favor because I asked myself, I was the only black person on the team. Why me?
Why you? Yeah.
Right? Because I could as well have been asked to leave, but that didn't happen. So I was kept. And remember, I was on a sponsored visa. If I'd been asked to leave,
you have to find a job or
within
you're
a particular time, or you need to head out. So that again was God looking out for me.
You. Yeah.
But ultimately, I'm hung around for another year, and nothing really changed with the firm. And I was trying to find a new role, and I think the main thing to say from that whole experience was, I had a particular company that I thought this is where I wanted to go, and I did a lot to try to get there, but that door shut. Okay, so that door shut. I know, having gone through the MBA experience, one of the things I sort of said a lot was about persistence, going for it. So I thought, okay, that door has shut, but remember the MBA experience, the door shut, but I sort of kept at it, and ultimately the door opened. So maybe in this time again, just keep at it, and perhaps this door would reopen.
Yeah.
So when they told me no, I found a way to go back to meet the hiring manager.
Yeah.
And he told me, like, basically the door is not opening.
Was it clear to you? You know how back then with the MBA it was clear that why I'm not being accepted is probably because of this GMAT thing. For this job, at least in your conversation, was it clear that you could go home and be like, okay, fine, makes sense? Or...
No, in this particular instance, man, trust me, I put my best foot forward.
Yeah.
There was nothing about my performance. Basically, they just had other reasons why, other things going on at their firm, why that decision didn't progress. The point I'm trying to make here, so we don't lose the point, is that God answered a prayer in a particular way in the past doesn't mean He's going to answer a prayer in a similar way in future. He could, but God is so diverse that He would answer prayers
a multitude of ways,
however He wants to answer it. So in this particular instance, the answer to my prayers was not persistence at that particular job. Right? God had a totally different plan that He was cooking, which had started from literally when everybody was asked to leave.
Yeah.
Right? So that other conversation had started. I continued with it, but the company will go quiet for like a very long period, then they'll come back. They just disappear again.
Yeah.
So it was going on in the background. Ultimately, they hired me. Okay?
Yeah.
Ultimately, they hired me. But as all of this was happening, other things were going on in the interim. So me thinking, okay, this is where the action is. But that's not where the action was. God had another plan. Right? So I think with all of this, I think maybe one of the main things I learned was that what is most important with everything is you just have to trust God. Trust Him every single day, because the Bible says as the wind blows from the east to the west, so you actually don't know what the Spirit of God is doing. Right? So if you don't know what He's doing, all you can do is just trust Him every day that He has your back. Right? Commit your plans to Him. Acknowledge Him in all your ways, and you direct your path.
I like to join that verse with the verse in Ecclesiastes that says, sow your seed in the summer and the winter or whatever, because you don't know which ones of your seed is going to, and why I'm linking it is because you trust God, but you've said it over and over again that faith and works. During your trust in God, like you say, you reached out to them a couple of times. You just say, oh, fine, the door is closed. They didn't give me an offer. It is what it is. But you are persistently going after, having conversations, putting yourself out there. And I believe also continuing to develop your craft such that even when someone thinks of reevaluating you, you can actively show that you are valuable. You're someone that they should be considering. There's a blog post of yours that I really, really liked. I think I read it during a season of waiting, so to speak. I think it's about waiting on God, and you outline a couple of things there, and I picked out 4 that for me stood out from it. And one of them is linked to the book that you said you're reading, God, Where Are You Now? Did you say that's the name of the book? Is why does God make us wait? Having waited for things in your past and now on the other side, obviously we're almost always waiting on God for something, but what have you come to learn to be the reason why God makes us wait?
First of all, there are many potential reasons why it looks as if you are waiting or you're actually waiting. It could be for so many reasons.
Yeah.
Right. But I think ultimately, the ultimate thing is God has a plan for our lives. And the Bible actually says that if you're a true child of God, you must go through testing. Right. You must go through trials. And it's just part of how God works with us.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And if you don't, then the Bible uses a very strong word. It says you're illegitimate. You're an illegitimate son of God if you actually do not go through trials. Which is quite fascinating.
Yeah.
So when I sort of look on the span of my life, and I think all the way back to perhaps when I think I first expressed faith, and I look all the way back to today, I can just sort of see multiple times of providence in God working.
Yeah.
And maybe the one thing that's consistent in all of this is, yes, faith and trust in God. But I mean, there's different things. He's trying to work on me.
Yeah.
He's trying to work on me, trying to make me more like him in character and thinking, trying to make me more useful in his service. There are many worldviews that I grew up with. And I mean, the question was, how do you take this guy who perhaps has, there's a good element of him, but there's just all this stuff.
Yeah.
How do you sort of like rid him of all of that?
Yeah.
Right. And, so there's just a lot going on. Sometimes it's because of maybe sins you've committed in the past, right? And during this wilderness season, that blog post I referred to is called "Principles for Waiting on God and Dealing with Uncertainty."
Yeah.
And one of the things I think I mentioned in there was that you actually need to take that time
Search
to
your heart.
search your heart and confess your sins, right? Not just like, oh yeah, God forgive me of all my sins. No. I think when I was going through it, I literally had to think, it's like primary school, that guy that I bullied.
I'm giggling and laughing because that sounds so like me. And it's a very weird point to be in, because on the one hand, I know God being a good father is not vindictive, right? Or I'd like to believe God is not vindictive like that. So I don't think he's sitting there with like a checkbook. You're now praying for a job. Remember you did this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, sometimes during that season, you're like, okay, God. Okay, maybe we need to have a conversation.
Maybe it's because of because that's what happens, right?
Yeah.
And like you rightly said, it might not be.
Yeah. But
the reality is, if you know you've sinned, you cannot avoid having the thought: is it because of X that this is happening?
Yeah.
Right. And if you come from Africa, you also cannot avoid to think: is it some juju, some jazz man?
Exactly. Maybe someone I pulled it 20 years ago, tied a string around the doors, whoever Soji goes.
Yeah. And but the Bible actually also says, the Bible is a fascinating book, and I encourage everybody to study. It says, a curse is like a bird. It might flutter over you, but if you don't deserve it, it will fly away.
Okay.
Right? So so which actually means that if you actually deserve it, if there was a curse on you, it would actually stay, and it will manifest in your life in some shape or form. Right?
That's a story for another day. Because it's loaded. It's loaded.
It is loaded. It is loaded. And I write about generational curses on the blog as well. But look, there's a lot of things to learn and unlearn during wilderness seasons.
Yeah.
But I think through it all, God is faithful.
Yeah.
I never lacked food.
Yeah.
Mental health was great. Met a lot of new people. I had opportunities to sow and invest in other people's lives.
Yeah.
There's just a lot that happened. I went back home, it's had the testimony I gave in church about my mom, family and all of that. Just a lot that happened in 1 year. Literally 365 days.
Yeah.
Literally 1 year. Just a lot. And so like when we go through those seasons, and for me, my most frequent seasons have had to do with job related things. And that's me.
Yeah.
And God knows why he chose this crucible for me.
For you.
For someone else, it's something else.
Yeah.
Right. For some people, it could be, I don't know, praying to God for a spouse.
Yeah.
Trying to get a child.
Yeah.
It could be, family problems.
Yeah.
It could be alcohol, and it could be anything.
Yeah.
Right. But I think the one thing which is consistent with all of this is just trusting in God. And I literally trying to build a relationship with him on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And maybe just one last thing to say, because I sort of know when I took my very first step of faith.
Okay.
I was in university.
Yeah.
I can tell you that story very quickly. I was in church. You see this voice that always comes to me in church.
Yeah. At least it finds you in the right place.
Yeah, it finds me in the right place.
Yeah.
So I was in church and they were collecting the offerings.
Yeah.
And this voice came to my mind and said, Soji, drop your phone in the basket.
Your phone?
My phone. Yeah, I was in second year of university, I think. So I had this Nokia black and white phone. I said, what kind of request is this? So I said, okay, you know what, let me try it. So I wiped my phone, factory settings, pulled out my SIM card. When the offering basket came, I was sitting in the back row. I put the phone in the basket.
What did the deacon think?
No, I mean, they didn't know. I mean, they didn't see what I did. But I mean, they'd have seen it afterwards. They've seen it afterwards. But when the church service finished, I was like, what have I actually just done? Like, literally, I had no phone. How do I reach my parents? And this was like pre-internet
and all that stuff.
I was talking about 2G Nokia, black and white.
Yeah.
How my parents reach me.
Yeah.
So then I go back and I'm like, okay, God, look, this is what I've done. I feel very stupid. I mean, I said all these things to God in prayer. And then my mom reaches, because whenever they try to reach me, they have to go through my roommates.
Okay.
And I'll tell her that, okay, look, okay. I didn't tell her what I did.
What did you do?
I didn't tell her what I did. Because like, if you gave it away, then let the God you gave you to come and give you a new phone. So I didn't tell her that. I just told her, okay, I need a new phone. Yeah. I told her what I needed. Because in my mind, I wanted a new colored Nokia that could play music. Because that was a cool phone at the time. I didn't remember, but it was a quality, that was what I wanted. Yeah. And ultimately, I think about a month later, my parents came visiting and they came with a new phone. Okay. But you see, in growing up, my parents never brought us up with the expectation that you would get any sort of excess. Yeah. They brought us up in the environment of there's not enough and there's never enough. Right? So you just have to focus on managing whatever it is you have to survive. So I didn't have the expectation that these guys were going to bring anything. Yeah. And I actually didn't know what was going to happen next. But that, I think, was the beginning of me expressing faith in some shape or form. Okay. It's manifested in so many ways over time. And I also grew up in a church where the pastor preached so much about faith and practical faith. Right? And I think for me, those sermons and messages had a big impact on me as a young man. They've carried you. And I mean, we've said a lot of things today, but it's manifested in so many other ways. Yeah.
I think maybe to close it off, you probably have said it already, but what is the one thing you know about God now, looking back?
Simply that he is real and he actually does exist. And he always has a plan. Maybe the one thing I'll probably say is, see, when God shows up, when he actually shows up, he actually shuts everything else down. Like nothing else, like none of your worries, everything just like disappears. Because for example, after that company told me, after I got that offer, and I got I finally got the offer for the actual job I got where the bosses were Jewish. All the other options I was considering just fell away. I didn't even think about them anymore. Everything just like dropped off. I don't know. It's like everything went away. All right. Same thing this time around. The other job situation we spoke about. I had a bunch of options. When the offer for my current role came, everything else just disappeared. Yeah. Like literally, when God shows up, it's like he shows up like a boss. He literally shows up like a boss, and everything else he just like quenches all your fears, all your concerns, all your worries, so that you look back and you ask, why was I actually worried? Yeah. But you see, no two experiences are the same. Yeah. Right? And every season we go through, it's never easy. Yeah. Right? There are other things I'm believing God for now, and it's not an easy experience. Yeah. Right? But I sort of rely on the evidence of what is done in the past. Because I've also studied and I know that if I prove myself unfaithful in my current season, God is actually going to hold it against me. Why? Because he has shown himself to me time and time again. Right? And I actually have no choice but to trust him again. Sure. Because it's the same. He hasn't changed. He hasn't changed. He might have other things he's trying to do, and I just have to like hold on to it. Because see, the ultimate reason for all of these seasons is one thing. God is working on us. Sure. He's trying to make us ready for his kingdom. Right? And if we don't go through those tests and trials now, ultimately, when it's a test of life and death,
We will fail.
we will fail. Right? So we need to pass those tests today. And those tests will manifest for everybody in different ways. But we must pass. We have to pass the test. Yeah. Right? And so that's the ultimate reason. Okay. You know, and yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Good.
It wasn't too difficult, was it?
No, it wasn't.
All right. Thank you so much for giving me your time, and thank you for watching. If you have, anything that you want to say, let's engage in the comments as usual. I found this very edifying for my journey in my own seasons, and I hope that you did too. Thank you for your time. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.